hey guys, and welcome to this episode of TNCBA's Chasing Ghosts. And again, the point behind these videos, and I hope to start doing them this way instead of just kind of recording them on my computer at home, but the point behind these videos is to talk about our adjustments and what we did and how we approached a certain lake and went through practice and the tournament. And sometimes we don't get to practice, so sometimes some of these we don't get to do a Chasing Ghost on. But our focus on this one is going to be from Douglas Lake in the Morristown Marine event. So I'm going to be talking about the approach there and then how things played out in the actual tournament. And so as we roll through this video, pay attention to adjustments we made or what our plan was kind of going in, and whether we were able to stick with that or had to make adjustments to that. But we're going to go ahead and get the video rolling and be talking to you as we go through this. All right, guys, so you can see here on Douglas, we got out on Thursday for practice. And the biggest thing with practice is going in, I was thinking there's going to be a shad spawn. Because, you know, Kelsey, we know that full moon in May,
oh yeah,
that's when it's somewhere around there. Either it's just starting or it's been going on. And you see Dad was down here with me practicing on Thursday. And I ended up fishing the tournament with Snyder. But we were keying in on river rock or riprap banks or banks that had rock on them, and where you could see shad on the live scope. So I knew that there was shad close by. I knew there was shad in the vicinity, and in these fish were up shallow feeding. I'm throwing a jerk bait here. Got a lot of bites on the jerk bait that morning. That's a really good bait there during that shad spawn time. This one here was the best fish probably caught all out of practice and out of the tournament. You can see that fish had been feeding up, was nice and fat.
Beautiful.
But after the morning, you know, things really, they kind of slowed down pretty quickly, you know, and that's kind of typical of the shad spawn, is that things start to slow down. So we jumped around kind of quick, trying to see where that shad spawn was going on at. I talked to y'all about that in our tips, tricks, and how-tos. Move around a lot, see where the shad spawn's going on. So we were starting out up around Swans. We'd made our way down here towards Dandridge, and we pulled in on this one point where there's some riprap and stuff, and smallmouth started schooling. It got me really excited, and threw that jerkbait out there and got bit. Never could get these fish to fire up in the actual tournament.
Yeah.
We went back and caught some smaller ones on a Ned rig. They were hanging out a little bit lower towards the bottom.
Do you just feel like it was just a little too late? You feel like they'd already moved on?
I do think it was a little too late,
gone.
because that's one thing about the practice. We got out there a little bit earlier, and by the time the tournament got going and things, we got settled in, it was a little bit later than these times. So I think maybe they had fed just a little bit earlier.
Because one thing I've noticed with shad spawns and things like that is if you miss it, it's done, and it gets really tough after a while.
And it does. It's a grinder. So that's why, really, as we were going through this practice here and we located some of these areas, I was pretty nervous going into the tournament. For that reason, is know I'm going to have to capitalize really quick. And I'm going to have to find it. So in this practice, we're bouncing around really quick. The jerkbait was the major player. And what's going to be funny is I don't get a single jerkbait bite in the tournament.
Wow. Okay.
And I don't know, it didn't feel right. There wasn't a lot of wind. And you'll see here that there wasn't exactly a ton of wind. But in a couple of places where I did get bit on the jerkbait, there was. Okay. You know, so after we fished that point just up from Dandridge, we went on around, and there's these trees on the points just down from Dandridge boat ramp that always got a lot of shad activity around during the shad spawn. You know, when we pull in there, I pick up a popar here, and you don't even have to work it. Basically, it's a flip it in there next to the limb,
in there on it,
pop it maybe once, or let it sit there sometimes, and they're eating on it. So this really started to give me some confidence, but I did know also, I'm like, you know, this spot right here, it'll come back to play. You'll see it in the actual tournament that this spot will play for us. But I knew that I couldn't go there first. And that was kind of frustrating because when we pulled in here, they're going ballistic. Dad catches one on a spinnerbait. I catch a couple on a popper. They're in those trees just gorging themselves on these shad. But I knew if I tried to go there first, because I did know my boat number at this point. I knew it was going to be boat 56.
Yeah.
And I knew with 190 boats still to come, or 180 boats, there's going to be so much wave action here that I've learned my lesson in the past. Stay away from it. So even though this was like the best spot we had, we didn't go there first. And eventually, once the day kind of got on up, we moved down here towards Shady Grove. Still, you can see I'm focusing in around riprap because I know that's where those fish have been hanging out.
Well, they're
there.
Well, they're looking for a hard structure. Like that's why you look at that brush, you look at the docks, you look at the riprap because they're just in a ball bumping up against each other.
And that bait has been there that morning. I know that, and those bass are hanging there close by. So we got a couple bites on the spook down there around that riprap, but nothing really big. And Dad picked up a couple on a spinnerbait. We just got one on tape here, but he picked one on a spinnerbait around the docks. But then my next game plan is what I went and focused on for a while, and that was offshore.
Okay.
The thing is, with that shad spawn still going on, there was a lot of fish still up. And I found some fish graphing out there, but there wasn't a lot of size.
Yeah.
And I did hear that from Doc Talk at the end when I was pulled up waiting for Snyder to weigh our fish. A lot of guys were like, yeah, I went out there to upgrade, but I was catching the exact same thing out there that I was catching up shallow. And we both know, and here I'm throwing a football head jig and just dragging it along the bottom. And one thing here is these fish were a little bit shallower than what we catch them once they fully get out there. You know? So they were kind of on this point. There was like a tier, a flat spot before it dropped off even deeper.
They're just in that point of, well, I could go back up or I could go down. You know, they were in that in between.
And you'll see on that point here in a little bit that's what they actually did. They actually moved back up shallower later on. So one thing we figured out, I looked out deep, wanted to find some of that stuff. But then, like we talked about, it continued to be tough. So I started running shady steep banks with a worm. And this is something that's worked for me in the past here, is to focus on shade lines. And we jump over here to the bridge at Swans, and Dad pins a good largemouth on a Kitech and stuff. And I really just started running those shade areas and looking around those, because no, you're not going to catch a million fish, but it's going to help you kind of narrow things down. They're going to be in that shade and stuff. So the worm and the Kitech here gave me some confidence that once that sun got up about noon or a little bit later, I could go run that game plan and I could get some bites doing that. So at this point in the day, guys, my thought is I'm going to run the shad spawn that morning. I even told Snyder this. I said until about 8:30 or 9 o'clock, I got us a game plan. I said, and then about 12:30 or 1 o'clock again, I got us a game plan. I said, between those two times, I ain't got a clue what we're doing, man, because that's how it was. It was that kind of that mid-morning was really dead for us. So here we are. We get into the tournament day. We're boat 56. We blast off, run up towards run up towards Indian Creek and stop on a pocket on the right that, to be honest with you, we never caught one out of, but I saw him there and I heard him there. And Kelsey, I get my heart broke here. The first fish I lose. She was probably about 2.5. Yeah. She came up, jumped, spit the chatterbait. So I picked up a chatterbait because there was a lot of trash in this little area. Jerkbait, there was no way I was going to be able to throw it. So I pick up the chatterbait. That one pops off. Next fish that I run into right here, boom. Oh my goodness, Kelsey, it felt huge. Guess what it was? My friend, the white bass.
Oh boy.
I just wanted to smack that thing and just, at this point, you know, time's ticking. And you know that shad spawn's going away and that early morning bite's going away.
Your window's closing.
I flipped that thing out there in the leg. I'm so mad at it. Turn right around here after turning the camera back on, skip it up under this tree with the chatterbait, and catch our first keeper right here. The chatterbait was our big player all day long, up shallow anyways.
Okay.
We did catch some fish out deep on a football jig that we'll get to here in a minute, but staying around that brush and staying around some timber here, these docks, that was key with the chatterbait that morning. So I was throwing the chatterbait, and Snyder here is flipping around a little white Kitech. Okay. And he's actually hung up right here, and he's flicking it off that tree. and one comes up and takes it off that tree. And he catches me off guard because he's like, I'm hung up. And then all of a sudden, this was actually probably our second biggest bass of the day. So that little Kitech.
Don't you love that?
Oh, I do. I'm like, that's why I called him. I called him a liar later. I missed one of his catches on camera that he was doing the same thing. He's like, it's just little. It's just little. And I was like, oh, no, it's not. No, it's not. So I'm like, dude, you got to quit lying to me. I got to be ready for this stuff. But I keep on throwing the chatterbait around here, around some of this buck brush. Where that shad had been up there spawning. They weren't spawning as hard on Saturday as they were on Thursday, but they were still up there.
Do you feel like the pressure on the lakes
may
have had something to do with that? It
may have had something to do with that. The weather was changing and stuff. Now, this one's our heartbreak here. I set the hook on her, lose her. I let it sit. She gets back on it, and there's just nowhere for me to go. I go to boat flipper, and that one was easily our big fish of the day. I'm not going to sit here and try to say she was 5 pounds. But she was easily our big fish of the day, and that could have made a big difference. But kind of got myself handcuffed there and didn't have nowhere to go with her, and just tried to boat flip her last second. All right, so you see here,
in those situations,
you just get in there. There's no way to react. So here we come back. These trees. Okay, like I told you, the game plan here was, and this is part of that strategy going into tournament fishing, guys, that I love. Notice how calm.
Mm-hmm.
If I'd have come here first thing in the morning, that place would have been blown out by all the wave action and stuff. And it was free because I sat there watching it the whole time we were waiting to blast off. I was like, is somebody going to go over there? Nobody ever did. I could have gone there. That's
crazy.
But I held off. And when I did, we came back to it. It had calmed down. So I move up there with that chatterbait, catch another keeper here to put in the boat. Nothing big, but it's something that's settling me down. Because after we lost that big one and I'd lost that one first thing in the morning, my wheels, I was starting to spin. So we hang around these trees right here. This one, I throw it across, and there's a limb under the water. And you're going to see me here get locked up for a second when I set the hook because she takes me down under the branch, and I panic a little bit. So there she bites, and now I'm trying to get her back off that tree limb, and then she finally does come free. And she was a solid 2.5 to 3 pounder, but again on that chatterbait. Now we move back right here to the ramp at Dandridge because I really like that bluff. You all love that bluff too. That's a place you can go to get some bites.
It is a retread place.
And before we even get onto the bluff, Snyder's throwing a football jig out a little bit deeper and hooks into a really good one here. The rest of that bluff, nothing happened, but this is one of those places I told him, I was like, if we don't stop here, somebody's going to be fishing it later on in the day. I want to give it a try. So he catches that one on the football jig to really help us. Now we've gone a little bit later in the day, and I'm getting to that point where I'm getting my shade lines on my bluffs. I pick up a spinnerbait, and I'm just slow rolling it because there's bait balls along these bluffs.
Yeah.
And I'm basically throwing the spinnerbait out there and just working it through or over top of those bait balls. I was really hoping that this thing would be bigger. I was seeing some things on the graph and on live scope that looked like some really healthy fish. This one ended up not helping us whatsoever. And we continue to kind of work some of these banks, these steeper banks that have some shade on them. He catches this one here on a brush hog. But we spend our day jumping back and forth between deep and shallow, kind of checking some of those deep spots and stuff. And that's really how we put together this bag, guys, was kind of mixing that in and going back and forth between that deep and shallow. But the key to this day was keeping my head about myself instead of getting spun out earlier and kind of sticking with that game plan and not abandoning it.
Keeping your head such a key thing when you're fishing, because I mean a lot of times if you're not mentally prepared, you're not prepared at all.
You're done. You're done for. And I knew it was going to be tough, and so I stuck with it. We came back to those trees later on. I picked up another bite, but at this point we're not making any upgrades. We had pulled a little bit throughout the day, so here it is. It's 3:05. We check in at 3:15. I'm like, I've got nothing else to do that I know to go catch a big one other than go out deep. So we pull out on a point just down from Dandridge here, and I'm throwing a football head jig, just dragging it along. And the thing is, at this point, we probably have in the neighborhood of 10 pounds, I would dare say. But Snyder even asked me, he goes, do you see anything down there? I was like, I really didn't. I didn't see anything when I graphed it, but like I said, I know they come here. I know they set up here, and she loads up. She actually thumped it pretty good. And when I set the hook into her here, I was just like, please do not come unbuttoned when she rolled up. And he gets her in the net, and like I love fishing to the last minute like that and catching that one keeper. And I'm telling him, I'm like, put it in the box, man. You go back there and put that thing in the box. And that was about a 2-pound upgrade for us, and got us up there to where we were able to finish in the top 30 and get us a check and stuff. So all in all, it was a good day. And the reflection on that is, with the shad spawn, I knew I had to find something early. So I found me a few places that the shad were up spawning really good, and that the fish were there close by, and that was key in practice, guys. And then I also went out and found me some stuff out deep in kind of an alternate pattern. So the deep and that shady bluff line, the bluff with the shade line, were my alternate patterns that really came through to kind of give me a few more bites and help me out. But guys, don't get spun out in these shad spawn tournaments, because it's going to get tough after the shad spawn's over. There's no question.
Oh yeah.
And it's going to be a grind. And as we saw here, those small upgrades are going to be really, really key for you, to maybe getting a check and being able to wrap things up and do really well. So my thing to you guys, shad spawn, move around a lot in practice. Locate where those shad spawns are going on. You got to keep your head on a swivel about making adjustments and movements.
Yeah.
I even purposely that morning, because I knew things were going to be tough, usually I'll pull up there to the dock at Dandridge and tie on light and all that stuff and have no problem with it. This time I purposely dropped power poles and dropped the trolling motor away from the dock and got myself away from it, because I didn't want to hear it.
Yeah,
I didn't want to get wrapped up into it.
That's very understandable.
Because it's easy to be like, oh man, I caught like 20 pounds out deep yesterday, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going shallow first thing. Maybe I should go out deep. So
it's very easy to get spun out.
It's very easy to get spun out. So guys, be careful about what you're hearing around you when these grinder tournaments are going on. Stay true to what you got, guys, and play it out. And the biggest thing I'll tell you is, guys, fish till the end. You never know, that last ditch effort, that last cast could be that one keeper that upgrades.
Can't tell you how many times Dad and I in the past year, I mean, fished till the very end, and we have made key calls with 10, 15 minutes to go in the tournament. So
and it makes a huge difference. So guys, hope you all learn a little bit from this TNCBA's Chasing Ghosts and the adjustments that we made and what things we did out there and how we approached that tournament setting. But we'll see you on the next one, guys.
Take care.